Most probably you came by this video because you want to start web development in 2021, but at the same time when you started to search for which course you need to learn, what path you should take, you find yourself overwhelmed because of the old buzzwords like JavaScript, HTML, Python, and you don't understand them. And when you go to our job description, you find a lot of things that you don't understand. So in this video we'll try to declutter all of this, draw a clear pathway to follow, and to start your web development journey. So let's start. Hello, Abdo here. So let's start with the basic. What is the internet? So when I want to describe the internet to anyone, like he is not tech guy and he asks me, okay, what is the internet? So I would say the internet consists of three main parts. First, the UI or the user interface, the data, and the business logic of the web application or the website. So first, the UI or the user interface is what you are currently seeing now on your browser. Like you are seeing some videos on your right, you're seeing the video you are seeing right now. When you go to Facebook, you are seeing like the images, some of your friends, and some text. This is what we call the UI, the things that you as a user interface with them. Then there is the data, which is, like currently the data is the most valuable thing for any online business, which is like either user data, text, topics, videos, images, information, processing, anything that is information eventually. And the last part, which is the business value, which the application you are dealing with deliver to its user. For example, when you see on Facebook, you are seeing your friends, so the business value would be you are connecting with your friends, you could message them. So these are the three parts that any website consists of. Each one of these three parts maps to three different professions or three different paths. Each web developer should at least know some of them, and eventually when you start applying for a job, you would specialize in one of them. So the user interface maps to what we call front-end development. The data or the information on the website, it maps eventually to DevOps, and the business value which is delivered maps to backends. This is, by the way, is oversimplifying their job description, and I'm very sorry for web developers who are watching this, but we are trying to make it a little bit clear for people who are not in the tech industry or who don't understand it. So for front-end developers, they are the people who develop the UI, like which buttons in each website, which form appears. They learn three things. First, they learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So HTML, this is what I would like to call it's the skeleton of the website. So each button, form, table, essentially anything that builds the skeleton of the website or the structure of it. Then comes the CSS, which is the language that is used to design the website. I would like to call it makeup artist of the web. You could make the font a little bit bigger, you could change the coloring, you could make a certain form appear or disappear, you could make the website mobile responsive. This is the job of CSS. And finally comes JavaScript, which is essentially it is a programming language, but at the same time it is what the web uses to do interactive things on the website. So for example, when you click on a button and a form appears, or when you click on save button and your data is sent to the server, and we will come to this part, or when you write something in Google Docs and it interacts with it, like making the font bold, it auto saves your form, or when you open Google Sheets and it does calculations when you enter numbers. This is JavaScript. So I could say it is the brains of the website, like the brains of the user interface. So these are the three main parts for frontend: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And you would find link for courses for them in the topic in the description. But when you start building websites for frontend, you wouldn't start from scratch. Yes, you would use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but there are awesome people who already written code that would increase your efficiency and make you build websites way faster. And we call these types of code that people have written, we call it libraries or frameworks. They are under different names. And for the front end, there are two famous libraries. One is called React.js and the other one is called Angular, and most of websites are built using them. You could build websites with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript from scratch, but using libraries would make your life easier. Now let's speak about the second part, which is backend development. And if you remember, in the beginning of the video we spoke about three things: UI, data, and business value. So UI is the form or the thing that appears on your website, and there is the information part, the text that you see, your friends list, the tweets, images. These are the data. Back-end developers are the people who control access to this data. This is their essential job, and they control, okay, this user can access a certain data, this user can delete this data, this user deletes this data, like control access and also do operations. And these operations, we call them in the web industry, we call them CRUD, which is short for create, read, update, and delete. These are the operations that any user would do for a certain data or a certain information. To start back-end development, you have to pick up any programming language, and there are some programming languages that works better for the web, and the most famous ones are Python, Node.js, Go, PHP, Java. These are the most famous ones. Also, there might be other famous languages as well, but so far these are the ones that I have interacted with, and there are many courses for each one of them. So I would suggest, if you want to start, you would start with Node.js because it's essentially JavaScript, and it would be easier for you to learn and progress in it. And if you want a more established language, I would suggest learning PHP, because around 30% of the websites in the world are built using PHP, because all of them are using WordPress. So these are the languages that I would suggest for you to start with. And similar to front-end libraries, there are also back-end libraries that would make your programming much faster and easier. So since we are focusing on Node.js and PHP, so for Node.js language, there is a library called Express.js that would make programming Node.js way easier and faster. And for PHP, there is a library called Laravel. And both of these libraries would make you develop backend faster and easier. You could, by the way, choose either Node.js or PHP. You don't have to focus on both of them. Eventually, you could transition easier between even programming languages. But just start with a single programming language like Node.js, for example. Focus on it, build things with it, learn it, master it, and then you could easily transition to PHP, then Python, or in Java, whatever language you want. It would be easier. And finally comes the last part of our internet concept, which is the data, and the people who are maintaining the data, making the website reliable, also serving the code to your browser. These people are called DevOps, and as a web developer, you don't need to get in depth to learn everything about DevOps, because this is a whole big profession. But as a web developer, you need to learn few basics, and you would need to learn two things. First part is databases, and they are the place where we store the data, the information. You would need to learn how to deal with databases, and also cloud computing, and these are like the servers which we store the code on. So for databases, you would need to learn two things. The first one is MySQL and NoSQL. These are two different types of databases or different ways of storing data. There are hundreds of ways to store data, but we would only speak about these two things because they are most famous and they are essential for you to learn. The second one is cloud, and these are the servers, like the computer which is online 24/7, storing the code, serving it to you. You would need to learn how to deal with them, how to put the code inside it, how to make it respond to customers using browsers. And the most famous one is AWS, which is Amazon Web Services. And you would find also course for everything that I am saying in the articles that I mentioned, so don't worry about it. And you would also need to learn how to use the command line or the terminal, because it's very essential. Like most of the tools in the web that we are using to program, libraries, automate stuff, control machines, we need the command line because it's more machine friendly, because the computer cannot use the browser, for example, but it can understand the command line. One last thing which you need to learn as part of your software learning, you need to learn something called code versioning. When you start working in a company, for example, you wouldn't be alone, you would work in a team, and you need something for all of you to collaborate, communicate which code you want to enter into your code base, also control versions of your code and the history of it. We call this version control, but you could think of it like it's a history of your code. So for example, if you create a folder with few images, you call it like version 1, then take the images and you change them, you call the folder version 2. But instead of that, you have only one folder, but then you have like a span of time through it. So yeah, you would have like 4 dimensions in this case. There are many version control systems that exist, but you could start with Git, which is widely used among many software companies. There are other systems, but you could start with Git and then you could continue learning the other stuff. I know there are many courses you have to learn. What you think now, like, oh wow, there are many tutorials and courses that I have to learn to start software or web development. Yes, there are many things that you have to learn, but you would enjoy seeing the results from the first course. Like when you start learning HTML and you start creating buttons, forms on the website, you would enjoy it a lot. For many people that I knew who program, they have a lot of passion for programming actually. Like it's not just a job for them, it's more like a hobby or an art. It like you would enjoy creating stuff. And after you finish these courses, you still have many courses to learn. Like I have been programming professionally since 2014 and I'm still learning till today. I know for some people it might seem annoying, like, oh, I have to learn till I die, for example. But for anyone that I knew who is programming, this is actually part of the fun. Every day there is something new, there is a new library, there is a new way to program. This is what it makes it fun. You are creating something, you are putting new apps into the world. This is what it makes programming for many people like an art or a hobby. It's not just a job, and you would have endless opportunities. Like you could start for a job, for example, and you might one day build a new application that will change the whole world and inspire a lot of people. I hope this video clarifies a lot of things in your mind, and of course if you have any questions you could mention them in the comment, or you could ping me in all my social media accounts and I would answer them and would help you in your journey. And you would also find in the description the link for the article, which have all links for all of these courses. And I hope you would enjoy this journey, and best wishes.